If salaries of Denel employees go unpaid, Public Enterprises Minister Gordhan's salary must also be blocked. That's the call from National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa General Secretary Ivan Jim. He has accused Gordhan of and Alcotia sleeping on duty. Jim has condemned the ongoing financial challenges at the SOE. Let's engage now with Numsa's spokesperson Phakamile Hlubi-Majola around the challenges that employees are facing at Denel. Phakamile, thank you so much for your time. Denel's continued financial challenges, we've been talking about this. What's the impact on workers?
On your show. It's really been devastating on workers. Our members are going through the most difficult time. You have a situation at Denel where some divisions are paying salaries if they're able to generate an income, but those divisions that are unable to generate an income are not paying salaries. And so workers are having to make their own means in order to survive. The department has not done anything to try and cushion them against this situation. And it's not just Denel. This has been the case at all state-owned entities. I know I've done interviews with you before where we spoke about SAA. It was the situation at SAA. It's the situation at SAA subsidiaries currently, where salaries or where the workers are getting half salary or no salary, and nothing from DPE in terms of trying to alleviate those conditions, whether it's for them to engage the Department of Labor or the CCMA to put people on training layoffs, have done absolutely nothing to try and help workers during this very difficult time.
And when there are these difficult times, there's uncertainty around salaries for workers. You are now saying as Numsa that if employees at Denel don't get paid, the minister mustn't get paid either.
No, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, the buck stops with the minister. He is the shareholder. And it's not like they don't have avenues or they couldn't find ways to try and assist work. We simply don't accept that as an explanation. Why else would you be a shareholder if you can't find solutions when it's part of your role, it's your responsibility to find solutions for workers? So we find it absolutely disgraceful. The minister has been sleeping on the job. He has not fulfilled his legal obligation, which is to ensure that these entities are sustainable. Denel should not even be in this situation. Denel is an entity which has the potential to actually be sustainable. One of its biggest challenges is that it requires, it needs to be capitalized by government, the shareholder, so that it can fill its order books. There are numerous clients who are ready to order from Denel, and if it was able to fill those, find itself in this dire situation. But instead, the minister is literally allowing Denel to slowly collapse. And this is why, as Numsa, we have had to intervene, as we've done, by taking steps to apply to the Constitutional Court for the court to hold the minister accountable for his failure to run our state-owned entities, in particular Denel and SA Express.
Yeah, tell me more about that application that you filed with the Constitutional Court, because one of the things you wanted that court to do is determine whether Parliament should decide if state-owned enterprises can be allowed to be insolvent. What role do you think Parliament can play in a scenario like this, where clearly the plan that government has, if they do have a plan to deal with what's happening at Denel, is not working, at least from where we're standing now?
Well, the law is very clear about these state-owned entities. They exist because of an act in the law which enables their existence. And ministers have a duty as in terms of the role that they play in representing government as the shareholder to ensure that these entities are sustainable. And this is what we say in our court documents. We're also calling on the Constitutional Court to assist us because, to be frank, we don't feel that SCOPA has done enough to hold Minister Gordhan accountable for the chaos and the destruction that we've seen in state-owned entities under his leadership. Certainly in the case of SAA, that certainly was not the case. And if you look at what's happening at Denel and what happened at SA Express, it's very clear to us that we are not serving the same agendas. The agenda for us as Numsa is to save jobs, to ensure that these entities are turned around and are made sustainable. But the agenda seemingly on the side of the department is that they must collapse. And the collapse of these SOEs is to the benefit of the private sector. So we have to ask ourselves whether the minister is actually acting in the interest of us as the public, or if he's a minister of the private sector who is enabling private sector interests. Because our problem is that even as you look at this situation with Denel, if we have decided as a country that SOEs must cease to exist and must be handed over to the private sector, that's not a decision that you can just wake up and decide to implement. There must be a proper parliamentary process. If you recall, Clement, when the issue of e-tolling was being hotly debated, there was a process in Parliament. There were public consultations that took place to ensure that the public was fully behind these policy changes. And it's the same here when it comes to these SOEs. As Numsa was saying that a court cannot simply decide through a liquidation order that SA Express no longer exists. Parliament must play its role and must follow due process. And that means that if a decision has been taken that government is no longer going to play a role in state-owned entities, then let them follow the parliamentary process, which involves public consultations, for example. And so we want the Constitutional Court to assist us, to compel Parliament to do its work and to play its oversight role with respect to our SOEs, but in particular for SA Express and Denel.
What happened to the plans to deal with the financial challenges? Didn't the minister, Gordhan, announce during his budget vote, was it in May, that they have developed a new plan for restructuring that would then address those financial challenges at Denel?
The problem that, and as based on, even with the engagement of our members, is that whilst there are plans in place, for example, we're aware of the fact that a turnaround strategy had been presented by the executive to the Department of Public Enterprises for Denel. Those strategies must be funded and they must be capitalized. So right now, it's unclear whether Denel will be funded. And in the meantime, while it's not being funded, workers are just being left to languish and they're not able to obviously keep up with their debt payments, car payments, house payments, can't support their families because they're not receiving any salaries. There were reports last year that at least 2 of them unfortunately committed suicide as a result of the stress related to this. It's a completely painful and tragic situation, which in our view could have been avoided. Workers should not have to suffer like this. If this minister really cared about workers, he would have explored every single avenue that even though this restructuring is taking place, as a minister, as a shareholder, to demonstrate that they care about employees, they would have found ways or mechanisms to cushion workers during this time. Yeah. As I said, there are mechanisms in place. There's a training layoff scheme. Those are options. There's TERS through the Department of Employment and Labour. All of these things could have been done, but no steps have been taken.
Numsa spokesperson, Phakamile Hlubi-Majola, I appreciate your time.